I grew up on the west side of Jacksonville, Florida in the 1980s. Now, geographically, Jacksonville is in the northern part of Florida, but culturally, it's the south. It's the Leonard Skinner part of Florida. And we'd say the west side, the best side, which pretty much says it all, because it was a rough world to grow up in. It was stray dogs and random gunshots, trailer parks, all wrapped up in a carefree, half-barrel Florida lifestyle. My dad was also from the west side, and what I wanted when I was a kid is to have the same kind of close relationship with my dad that my brother had. But we didn't live with my dad. We lived with my meemaw, my peepaw, my dad's parents, and my dad lived at his girlfriend's house in the more suburban part of the west side. And his girlfriend lived on a cul-de-sac. I called it a dead end, but she called it a cul-de-sac because calling it that made it sound French and fancy. And she had a daughter named Sunshine, and Sunshine was 18 days older than me, and she reminded me of that all the time. Sunshine called my dad Dad and called me her sort of kind of in a way half-sister, even though our parents weren't married. And my dad told my brother and I that we had to play with Sunshine, and we weren't allowed to argue with her, which meant we always had to do what Sunshine wanted. But Sunshine didn't like to go outside in the sunlight. She liked to play inside with her dolls. I like to go outside. I like to ride bikes. I like to throw baseballs. I like to play two square in the driveway. So this was really hard for me. I didn't feel delicate. I felt free-spirited, wild, west side. But my dad didn't see that because he spent all of his time teaching my brother how to do things like be tough, walk it off, don't cry. But I was right there next to them, breathing in all this manly man stuff like a hot box of secondhand smoke because I wanted to be the one to play football. I wanted to learn how to show just two emotions, anger and nothing. So I was right there next to them, buzzkilling all my dad's best lessons on emotional repression, just breathing it in and then shoving it way down. So my dad had a rule. He said, never start a fight, but never back down from one. And what he meant by that was, don't be a bully, but don't be afraid to stand up to one either. Now, that rule was for my brother, but I took it to heart. So we'd see my dad like every other weekend on the lush suburbs, and we could convince Sunshine to play outside sometimes if she could bring her dolls with her. And that's how we met the neighborhood bullies. It's a group of kids, there's 3 of them. The oldest and the biggest one looked like Peppermint Patty from the Peanuts, except she had more muscles, and she cursed like a merchant marine. The next oldest and biggest one had blonde hair, blue eyes, a thick midsection. He looked like Biff from Back to the Future. And the youngest and the smallest one was about my age and my size. He had a skater boy haircut. It was shaved in the back and bangs that swept down over his eyes so he couldn't see anything. And Peppermint Patty saw Sunshine playing with her dolls, and she came up to us and said that we weren't allowed to play on their cul-de-sac anymore or they'd beat us up. Well, my brother and I, we sized up the situation and we realized we were outmatched, so my brother said, all right, let's go in. So we walked in and Sunshine says to my dad, Dad, some kids told us that we're not allowed to play outside anymore or they'd beat us up. See, she thought this was a good thing. But she had just admitted to my dad that we had backed down from a fight. So my dad looks at my brother and says, son, is that true? And my brother goes, I don't know. But then Sunshine goes, yes, you do. You were standing right there. So my dad didn't ask any questions, like how big these kids were, how many there were, how tough they were. He didn't ask anything, or the fact that his only information came from an overly excited 9-year-old girl, the older one. He just said to my brother, the 3 of you get back out there and you fight those kids, and you're not allowed to come back into this house until you do. And that's when I heard Sunshine go, what? See, she had never heard my dad's rules. He had sheltered her from that. So my brother said, all right, let's go. So we went out to the cul-de-sac and we found the kids and we told them that we had to fight them or we'd never be allowed back home again. And just for a moment, I swear Peppermint Patty felt bad for us. But then she shook it off and started cursing at us, and then the kid arguing started, and it was going back and forth, and I don't know what we said, but I'm sure it didn't make any sense. And I realized I was the only one on our side that was yelling. Sunshine, I was still in shock, and my brother was just standing there silently, and I realized, oh, my brother can't fight any of these kids. he can't fight the oldest and the biggest one because that's a girl. And if he hits a girl, well, that's worse than getting bullied. And he can't fight Biff because if he jumps on Biff, then Peppermint Patty will jump in. It'll be 2 against 1. And he can't fight the little skater boy because he's so much younger and smaller than my brother. That'd make my brother the bully. And Sunshine was hyperventilating or something, so she was no good. So it had to be me. It had to be me against little Tony Hawk. So I pushed him really hard. When he pushed me, we started rolling around on the ground, imitating what we thought a fight looked like. At one point, I had him pinned down on the ground. I thought, damn, he's cute. And I think that's when puberty kicked in. But then Biff saw that I was winning, so he jumped in to help him. My brother jumped in to help me. Sunshine got in the fetal position. My brother pulled Biff off of me. I jumped off of little Tony Hawk. I was breathing really hard and shaking, but I was excited. My brother was tense but calm, and Sunshine had passed out. No, because I had done it. I had fought these kids, and we could go back home. And Sunshine could play with her dolls outside whenever she wanted, which would be never, but she could. So my brother said, all right, let's go. So the 3 of us sauntered on back to the house in slow motion, opened up the door, and Sunshine said, Dad, we fought them. And I thought, 1, they're not married. 2, who's this we? I fought them. I'm the hero. I won the fight. But my dad just said, great. And that was it. He didn't ask if we won. He didn't ask if we were okay. That's all he said. We could have gone outside, walked around for a while, come back in, lied, and said we fought them, and he wouldn't have known the difference. But then I got it. My dad didn't say, go out there and beat them up. He said, go out there and fight them. Face your fears. Stand up for yourself, especially against a bully. He didn't care if we won or not. Now, this might not be the best way to teach respect for all. And I might not have had the relationship with my dad that I always wanted. I mean, so few of us do. But he was doing the best he could. And that was his best. And it felt like love. At least it felt like love if you're a kid from the West Side, the best side. Thank you.